A lot of people say, oh my God, I don't know how to make money. And I said, it's not knowing about how to make money. All systems are great. You can hire teams eventually. But what's most important is aligning your energy to the frequency of wealth. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. There is a frequency like everything else that exists in the universe. Money exists on a frequency, and when you can align to it and step into that, money will come. It might not come in the weekly check or bi-weekly check you were used to, but it'll come in an opportunity.
Welcome back to Creating Powerful Impact, where we go behind the scenes with leaders who are not just growing businesses, but transforming lives. I'm your host, Shay Wheat, and today I'm so excited to welcome a powerhouse of alignment, authenticity, and energy. Please welcome Michelle Rios, who is a transformational coach, a top 2% podcast host, former corporate executive turned soul-aligned leader, and she helps high achievers unlock purpose, freedom, and, I love this, extraordinary wealth. And today we are diving into how Michelle helps people rewrite their relationship with money. So incredibly important, as well as embrace soul-based selling and truly live extraordinary lives. Please welcome Michelle to the Creating Powerful Impact stage. How are you?
Oh, Shay, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I am just happy to be here with you, and I cannot wait to dive in.
I'm so excited because it's not every day you necessarily see a whole lot of people leaving corporate and then moving into the transformational space. So I would love for us to start there. What kind of prompted that leap for you to move from one space into the other?
Oh, it's such a really good question. And it's an important one because I think it's one of those things that most of us during the course of our adulthood and maybe even our adolescence, we have a pull. We have that whisper that comes up for us. And we say, well, that doesn't make sense. I'm not so sure that that is actually what I'm supposed to be doing. And I got it very early on. I knew probably back in my mid to late 20s that I was very interested in all things personal development, but I didn't understand that that could be a career path. And I was already climbing a corporate career path, and I was doing very well and moving very quickly. So I began living this a bit of a double life. I would study on the side, I would go to all of the talks, I would read all the books, and I think I read the very first Wayne Dyer book that ever came out, and Marianne Williamson and Deepak Chopra when they were really the pioneers. But the idea that I would take my very stable, secure, and understood path of growth from my corporate trajectory and go take this leap of faith felt really hard to understand how to do that at that age. And so I pressed on and I kept growing and doing my thing. And I got to this point where I was really focused on my next chapter. We were looking at all the things that were happening, which were incredibly blessed. We were just filled with so many blessings. I was in the C-suite. My husband had his own business. Our son was starting high school, and we had just come out of the other side of COVID. And I was already known in my field. I was in PR and communications, advising CEOs and other leaders around the globe on communication strategy and business strategy. I was the person from a crisis perspective that you'd call when the plane went down to get on site to say, okay, how do we handle this? How do we talk to our audiences and our people? And what are the messages we need to deploy? And I was sitting there doing this for all these other people. And one day, my son, who was listening in on some meetings I was having late at night, said, Mom, can I talk to you? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you're helping everybody else do these things, but when are you going to do the things that helps you write your book, tell your story? You're so good at telling all of us behind the scenes. He's like, but you should be doing this. You should be taking the center stage. And so here out of the mouth of babes, I'm sitting here going, well, that's a hold up the mirror moment. And I was on a little bit of a soul searching vacation with my family. We go away every year. We literally put the cell phones away and we kind of get lost and allow ourselves to dream. And it happened. I'm in the middle of an island in Greece, and it just sort of overwhelming piece of like, oh, this is the time. This is now is the time. Like I could wait and it might be easier from a financial perspective. My son will be in college in a few years, or I could just
Mhm.
do it now because I feel the urge to do it now. And I think if I don't act on it, it might not come around again that I feel inclined to do it. So
Yeah.
I kid you not, I got back within a couple weeks. I put in my resignation. I started a podcast. I started writing the book. All the things that I had been holding on to and working on behind the scenes then took center stage. So I would love to say it was this overnight flipping of a switch, but it took a slow burn of about probably 15 years before I really had the courage to act on it and raising a family and doing all these other things. But I will
Hmm.
say this, the corporate experience that I had was a wonderful springboard for becoming an entrepreneur because I was leading large teams. I was in charge of, I was really looking at spreadsheets with numbers and understanding forecasts and how we were going to build a business. So I was learning how to do this on somebody else's dime before I could do it on my own.
Hmm.
And when people said, "Oh my God, you finally arrived at the C-suite. Isn't this going to be hard to do? You're finally making bank. You're finally doing this thing, and now you're going to rip off the band-aid and start over." I actually felt like I had permission to do it. I was like, "Yeah, I've already proved myself down this avenue. There's really not much, more I can do." It's really at a point where there's nothing new anymore happening in this. I've now done all the different things over a very long career, and I had that desire to really be back at the starting over phase, creating brands for myself versus somebody else.
Hmm.
Really understanding how I could take my experience as a CEO whisperer within the corporate arena and to start to actually say, hey, I'm having these conversations anyway. Why don't we talk about how to create a life and business that's going to set your soul on fire? I was just
Yeah.
using different words before. I was like, how are we going to get this business to a place that you're excited and you're thriving? And I would
Uh-huh.
have the same conversations I'm having now as a transformational coach. It's just nobody wanted to pay for mindset work, but we still had to do it, right?
It is the stealth transformation that everybody has to do, because you will never progress beyond the starting block if you don't work on yourself, if you don't do the personal development, if you don't tap into the soul, essentially, of who you are and who it is you serve and what you're doing next. But I would love to maybe touch on, I know you had this aha moment type of thing, and in a place where you had the peace to allow the soul to probably talk to you is maybe a way to take a look at it, at least is what I'm understanding. What would you say are some of the biggest misconceptions, or people that are in the corporate world going, I want to listen to the soul, I want to tap into it, I want to put this into practice, but can I do it and can I make money?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that when you're feeling uncomfortable about that move you want to make, that must be a sign that it's not meant to be. And that's not usually the case. It's usually a sign that you're out of alignment. And if you start taking some action toward that which you want, you're going to find the peace comes with the taking of the action, not waiting for the stars to align. So I think that that's usually the first one. People are like, well, if it hasn't happened already, and I feel so uncomfortable and unsettled about this. I felt very much at peace, but that was because I had already said, what's the worst that can happen?
Right.
The worst that can happen is I have to make money in a different way, or I have to go back to getting a job in a corporate setting. I already know that I know how to do that. So the fear, there was really nothing left for me to go, oh, well, that might be hard initially, but I have a lot of contacts. I can start over. So I kind of move that aside. I think the other thing is the how you can make money piece. What a lot of people don't understand is that money is just energy. We're energy, your energy. You know this as a Reiki master. Like we're all just energy. And so when we stop looking at money as this coveted thing and we think about it as having an energetic frequency that we simply need to step into, we need to align to, it changes the game. And so everyone's like, aren't you worried about where money's going to come from? And that was probably the biggest aha for me is like, oh, I'm not. But also something had happened in the course of my career where I no longer was itching and striving to earn more money like I was in my early days, where I thought that if I worked harder, then I'd make more money. That was the
Mm-hmm.
equivalent, right? You stay later, you work harder, you get the gold star, they give you more money, you get promoted. What I was starting to see that was happening is the better I took care of myself, the more sleep I got, the more aligned I showed up as my most authentic self and was able to tell the truth about what I was seeing, about what I really believed, even if it was actually counterintuitive to the leadership. And the more I did that, which was stepping out against the grain, the more people were like, what does she have to say? I want her on the team. I want her to lead. And so money started to naturally flow the more I stepped into authenticity. So stepping into this entrepreneurial world for me was a really interesting experience because I didn't even have a website initially. I didn't have any marketing, and I had clients lined up before I had left because they knew that this was the kind of work I was already doing under a different title, under a different auspice, and now they had permission to talk to me one-on-one.
Mm.
I'm thinking about making a transition myself. I know that I need to work with you. I've been listening to your reels about authenticity and alignment, and I know I'm out of alignment. I don't know how to get there. I need help. I want to make that next jump, and I want my next chapter to be something that really makes my soul feel alive. Because right now, I'm just getting through the day to day. It's wash, rinse, repeat. And that really hit me hard because I had felt that for so long earlier in my career, where I was just like, I'm not really feeling it, but I'm going to keep pushing because I thought that's what I needed to do. And this was just a phase of the hard work that anyone needs to do to build something. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe there's a little bit of that. But the best work I ever did and the best work I continue to do don't come when I'm sleep deprived, haven't eaten, work 15-hour days. They come when I am incredibly intentional about where my energy goes. They come when I have, quite frankly, taken the best care of myself, knowing that when I show up with a clear mind and an open heart, I have something to give. I have something very
Yeah.
clean to give. My thinking and my inspired downloads come from that place, not from like, let me cram in everything about this client to learn about this industry so I can advise them best on their transition. It is from a place of intuition. It is from a place of like what I would call universal knowing, or you're tapping
Mm-hmm.
into source. And that's probably one of the biggest ahas. A lot of people say, oh my God, I don't know how to make money. And I said, it's not knowing about how to make money. All systems are great. You can hire teams eventually. But what's most important is aligning your energy to the frequency of wealth. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. There is a frequency like everything else that exists in the universe. Money exists on a frequency. And when you can align to it and step into that, money will come. It might not come in the weekly check or bi-weekly check you
Mm-hmm.
were used to, but it'll come in an opportunity. It'll come in a speaking gig that then gets you a client. It'll come in an event that you're supposed to be at to meet the right person who wants to partner with you. It'll come in different ways, but it will come. And so I always say, I love money follows me wherever I go because I spend a lot of time really just making sure my frequency is on the frequency of wealth. So what most people do is when they're worried about money, they pull back, right? They say, let's spend less because we need to be careful. And I grew up in New England. I'm from Maine. I came from a very humble, background. My parents were teenagers, so I know all about frugality and scarcity mindset. And I'll tell you, the hard conundrum is when you're in that place to grow. It is almost impossible to grow when you're stuck in that scarcity mindset. And so money has to flow. So it can be a smallest thing. Maybe the exchange is you give your time and the money comes through the energetic exchange of time, or because you are in a place that makes you feel elevated, that allows you to remove the blocks of scarcity and lack from your, not just your vernacular, but from the mind, you were able to then align with it. And so people say, what do you do? And I said, I usually take really good care of myself, whether it's a spa day or going for a walk or having a really good cup of coffee that I make in my own house, but I'm elevating my mind to bring money in. I'm removing a lot of the distractions and the noise that say, well, that's not the way money is hard to come by. Money has to be earned. I don't talk in that vocabulary
Yeah, I
anymore.
agree. It's kind of fascinating. I catch myself doing it and literally just did it like 2 days ago. Like I'm in a season where we're producing a number of events right now. They're kind of back to back. I had 4 events in 4 weeks. Like there was a lot. And when we're planning, some good size events, we're spending 100 plus hours leading into the event, eat times that, so on and so forth, right? And so I notice when I'm in the doing and the producing and the fulfillment and all of those pieces, I'm not resonating at a level of still bringing in flow and abundance. And I'm like kind of tunneling in. And I have to remember as the CEO to balance both and
Well,
to lean on team to handle those pieces so I can still stay at that level because that's my role in the company, right? It
a
sounds like
hundred
you're saying similar, like when I forget the practices of the meditation and when I forget to love on me and get enough sleep and all of those pieces, all of that vibration kind of goes away and then money doesn't flow in frequently. And you're like, "Oh, fudge, I've stopped doing what I normally do."
Well, and what you just described is the balance of the masculine and the divine feminine, right? And then
Yeah.
we all have it. It's not something that only women have. Men and women both have masculine and feminine energies. And the feminine is the receiving energy, right? The masculine is the do energy. And we need both. We have to be in our masculine to get things done. When you have an event to produce, you're in your masculine getting things done. But then there needs to be the season of change of after the event when you're back in your feminine and you're recharging and you get your downloads and you bring the flow back. And I think that's what a lot of people miss. We tend to stay mostly in our masculine. I think as working women in general, we're deeply soaked in our masculine energy when we're trying to get things done. And I think that that becomes a huge impediment of actually bringing money in with ease because we don't take the time to then reset and recharge and be in that divine feminine.
Mhm.
Most of us are used to getting things done, and getting things done is great, but it has to be in some balance where you are resetting that divine feminine energy to receive and bring it with ease and be in a state of flow, inspired action as well.
Yeah, I think that's part of the reason why Grace and Ease Productions is the name of the company,
I love
my
that.
company, because like it is a very masculine type of thing of running and producing and getting crazy awesome results and da 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 da. But then we still have to bring in that energetic side of doing it with as much grace and ease as possible and allowing the flow to come in and allowing the divine downloads to happen and take it where it needs to go to best support the audience, right? It makes it a little bit different. I'm curious to know from your perspective, and maybe you have an example of a client of yours where maybe a simple shift or like where they were and you tweaked and adjusted them or made them aware of something, changed that alignment to completely shift what they were doing and what their outcome was.
Yeah, I mean, so many good ones. And, I think of one client in particular a couple years back who came to me, someone I knew, who was a powerhouse in the marketing world, was a CMO, was living overseas, had come back to the States, and she knew she was ready for a next chapter and thought that was starting a company. And so she came to me with the goal of hiring me as her business coach to transform her mindset to be able to take on the role of major league entrepreneur, like right out of the gate. Resigned in December. We started working in January. We were going to have this company set up in 90 days. And it was interesting because she had already made that decision before she spent any time really understanding what was in alignment for her. So when we stepped back and said, look, first, let's talk about what you really want. And that was like, well, wait, no, I want to start this company. I said, okay, but we're going to start back and talk about what you really want to do, feel, and have.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, no one's ever asked me that. I just decided. And I said, and we're going to step it back and we're going to start there. So let's go through the exercise. And we spent time really examining how she wanted to feel, how she wanted her days to look, how she wanted to show up in the world, what the experiences she wanted to have. And lo and behold, within about 2 weeks, we realized she didn't want to actually start a consulting practice right out of the gate, that she needed some time to decompress. And she wanted to consult, but she didn't want the responsibility of having to hire a team and start and do her own branding and get up a website. She wanted to do more ad hoc consulting while she took some time to examine what was possible for her.
Mhm.
And it was interesting. That took a rewriting of a story because the story she told herself was, well, if I'm not a corporate powerhouse, then I'll be a powerhouse consultant.
Mhm.
And those were the only two possibilities that she gave herself. So there was already a story written before she had even left the previous assignment. And so I said, what if we just actually started rewriting your story from scratch? What would that look like?
Mm.
And that's a lot of the problem. We don't take the time to allow ourselves to say, what story do I want to write? Not what is the story about who I am from the past and what I've experienced, but what do I want the story to be going forward? And that's a really interesting exercise because a lot of people find themselves staring at a blank piece of paper or on their computer screen going, well, I should write this. And when you say, no,
Yeah.
no, no, what do you want? Let it come up just intuitively for you. Just type what comes up or write out what comes up. What does your heart say you want?
Do you ever have somebody going, okay, I hear you. What does my heart say? But it's not saying anything right now. What do you do then?
Sometimes, and usually we say sit with it. The reality is we have to turn the logic side of us, right? Our head space wants to drive the show, which is the ego. And if you've been around long enough to know, ego means edging God out. And if you really want to get off course and out of alignment, make all your decisions out of your head space. But if you really want to work in a place where you are aligned with the work and making money with ease, then do yourself a favor, let the brain take a break and let it come up from your soul. Let it come up from where you call it your heart space, your soul space, come up intuitively. And there is wisdom in that. That I remember the first time I heard Steve Jobs talk about this, he was like, intuition doesn't yell at you. It's a whisper, right? It's a
Yeah.
quiet little whisper. And it's that quiet little, if you're not really slowing down and quiet enough to listen to it, you're going to miss it. And so when I have clients going, I don't know, and I'm like, sit longer. I don't know. It's not coming. It's not coming. I'm like, sit longer, sit with it. It will come. And that's the problem. We try to rush all of these things to get to the other side and find alignment and enlightenment and then feel like we're on purpose. And it doesn't work this way. Most of our lives, if you have followed the traditional path of, going to college and getting a great degree from a good school and getting out into the work world and doing all the things to grow in a career, which is the traditional path most people take, you're going to have to undo some things that society told you was the way to go about it, because the reality is it's not a one size fits all. And that is a one size fits all cookie cutter approach to figuring out what you're supposed to be doing in your life versus you came here for a reason and we're going to find a way. We're going to map out not only what are you good at and what does the world need, but what is it that you feel called to do? And then we're going to figure out how the money comes from that. It's almost impossible to get it wrong when you're actually asking the right questions. And the right question should say things like, what comes up for me intuitively? So I'm like, oh my God, it says I should be, I don't know, writing books. How am I going to make money doing that? I don't get it. And then you search a little bit longer. You're like, oh, wait, I could be doing this line of business and I'm still have more freedom than I have today. And I could set up this and that's still more freedom than I have today, but it doesn't fit the stories that we told ourselves. So 9 times out of 10, I'm spending time with people going, let's rewrite that story. You need a new script for how you're moving forward. You get to decide. It doesn't mean you sit around and wait for intuitive downloads all day. You've got to take action, right? But when you're doing it from a place of alignment, you're going to find that you're going to get a lot of people coming to you if you're open about what you're trying to do and what you're interested in, where opportunities just flow. You know,
Mhm.
I'll tell you, I do a lot of podcast interviews, and one of those things that I always find amazing are people like, so how have you monetized your podcast? And I'm like, my podcast is like a calling card, and I do interviews with other people because it's a calling card. People hear you, someone's going to feel aligned to you. It may be 2 months down the road, but the business opportunity comes from the speaking gig that came from that one call, or the person that said, hey, I'm starting to think about making a change and I'd love some coaching on that. Can we work together? What would that look like? Or, oh, I heard that you have a group coaching opportunity. Can I join that? It's never in the moment. It's usually because you show up and you give from a place of alignment that those opportunities then find you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, without a doubt. And do you feel so somebody's sitting there and they're going, okay, sit with it, it'll show up. Um, you have to do the work, as you said. Are they are they like journaling? Are they doing why questions, how questions, what questions, all of the above kind of questions? Do you have any guidance on that? If somebody's sitting there, I'll go, okay, I understand. I need a takeaway from this. Where do I start before I like go and grab your free gift and everything else and want to, follow you and stalk you on Facebook or whatever?
Yeah,
Where
I mean,
where did they start?
those are great questions. And you can start with journaling. I think journaling is one of the most important tools you have in a toolbox, because when you are sitting in a place of openness and you just let yourself allow what's coming up for you to come up, you're going to find some really interesting patterns of like, what is it that you gravitate toward? What is it that you've always wanted to do? What is it you've always wanted to try? And then working with a coach, the finding out how to make money is actually the least of anyone's problems. Figuring out what it is you're really interested in, and then working with people who are out there putting together systems that can help you figure out the business end of it, that's the easy part. It's actually trying to remove the blocks that are saying this isn't a possibility for me. I find most people, once we kind of get through the being honest about what I want, because a lot of people are like, well, that doesn't make sense. Like that just is such a crazy idea. How could I do that? Getting them to not dismiss that crazy idea,
Yeah.
actually probably the first step. And then journaling is definitely important. I do a lot with journal prompts. I have a dear friend, Anna K. Morris, who does a journaling class based on the author's way. And I find that to be a phenomenal way to get yourself started. But if you're coaching one-on-one, it's a part of your weekly work with me. And when you're doing it in a group setting, we do weekly prompts so people can come back and reflect on what it was that came up for them in that. And you'll find that a lot of people are like, well, I didn't realize I even had a block. I've been telling myself this story of what's possible for so long, and I actually realized this is my mother's story. It's not even my story. I inherited it from my mom, or I handed it from my grandfather, or my father, or my sister, whomever in their life had been repeating that story over and over again. My mother's big thing was you should be grateful. I would say like I was a very grateful person because I came from humble beginnings, and I was given an opportunity because I worked really, really hard, and I got into corporate, and every single promotion I ever got, it was never that I earned it, is that I should be grateful. And so I went around going, I should be grateful. Why would I need to rock the boat? I should be grateful. Look at the amazing life I've had. But my soul was saying, this is not it for me. Like, yes, this was a great experience, and I'm glad I've invested time here, but now I want to do something different that is going to have greater impact and meaning and purpose for my life and where I'm heading next. And I need to be able to do this. And you find that a lot of people have told themselves stories for so long, going back to childhood, that undoing this through whether it's sitting in coaching, hypnotherapy, whether doing some form of energy medicine, EFT, certainly journal prompts are wonderful. But even having somebody test that theory of what they should be doing can oftentimes get people to go, I didn't even know that that's the thing that was holding me back. But yeah, that's the thing I say in autopilot. I automatically say that every time, like, for example, well, money doesn't grow on trees. Like, what do you expect? Okay, well, or, money is hard to come by. Well, if that's what you think, money is always going to be
Then
hard to come by,
absolutely you
right?
are truthful.
It is
And that's
always the
exactly what the
universe is
universe will give you.
going to hand you whatever you believe.
Yeah.
And so we do spend a lot of time identifying what those limiting beliefs are, because rewriting your narrative is so important. Like, we are the authors of our lives, and we don't recognize how much power that is. In fact, we often, I love to say, we all play in some role of distraction on purpose, because once you realize how powerful you are, you're like, oh, now I'm responsible. Now I can't blame anything outside of me for the way my life is going, because based on my beliefs and based on my belief systems and the stories I tell myself, I then act on that. And that is the result of what I'm experiencing. The consequences that are then unfolding in my life are based on those. So if I don't address those at the get-go, it doesn't really matter what business you start or what thing you do, or it's kind of doomed to fail if you don't address those in the get-go. So
Yeah.
we spend a lot of time there. But what a lot of people don't recognize or understand about transformational coaching is we're not sitting around talking mindset in and of itself day in and day out to no avail. We're working on those things because we ultimately need to roll up our sleeves. And if it is a transition that you want to make from a career into a different career, we need to actually have a game plan, and we need to do the research, and we need to understand what the market is, and we need to understand who the players are, and we need to put a business plan together. And that's working with somebody who's going to ask you the right questions and make sure you're going and doing the work so that you can actually set this up. And I always say, what I want to be able to do is understand where you want to be a year from now. Because people who come to me and say, I want to change my life in 90 days, I'm like, great, we can do a lot of work. We can actually address what you want. We can talk about how you want to feel, what you want your life to look like. We can look at what all the limiting beliefs are or the things holding you back. We can even start to rewrite your story, 100%, no problem. But taking the action and doing the work that's needed to actually do the transformation. So if it's changing jobs, getting the next promotion, or creating a new business, or finding your life partner, 90 days might be a little ambitious, but we can get a lot of work done in the 90 days to set you up for success to do the other part of it. So my big thing is, where do you want to be a year from now? Because we are going to ask ourselves week in and week out what progress we're making against that goal that we stated would be that transformation we want to experience in our lives. And if you have a coach that's willing to not just sit there and hold your hand through the mindset work, but also hold you accountable to what that transformation is going to be, you will change your life in a year. And that's something that you don't realize how fast a year goes by. We're already in April of 2025.
Yes.
It goes by quickly, but that means
Exactly.
you need to be making marked progress against some goals pretty early on after identifying what it is that you want. And that's what I think the difference between folks that are kind of testing the waters in coaching and who are really committed to transforming, helping people transform their lives, is they're going to say, we need to assess whether you're actually progressing against this goal. Because if you're not, then I'm not holding you accountable enough, and we're not doing the work that needs to be done. We're stopping somewhere.
And
And
it's probably a limiting belief that's stopping us that we're not even aware of because it's subconscious.
a lot of people get really excited about figuring out what they want and understanding what the limiting beliefs are and rewriting the story, but then taking the action to actually go after what it is they say they want to do, have, or be is scary. It's scary. And that's when a lot of people stop. They're like, ooh, felt so good to sit in this realization of what I actually want and what alignment could look like. But actually doing it and becoming that next person and doing the transformation, that is really scary. And I don't know, what if I fail at it? And the biggest thing is, but what if you're a really great success and you're exactly what the world needed to be doing? And how will you know? Because if you don't try, you'll never know. So we're going to be here in a year. And if you're in the same place you are today in a year, how are you going to feel? That's usually the eye opener for most people. Not good. Great, me neither, because I won't have done my job and I'm going to deliver on my end because you've invested in me. So let's get to work.
Yep. Yeah. This has been amazing, Michelle. I think we could probably continue to have a conversation for a couple more hours. But sadly, we've got to wrap up. If people were interested in connecting with you, what is the best way for them to do that? And I also believe you have a gift for our audience. Can you share that?
Yeah, so you have really a manifesting tool for bringing wealth energetics into your life, and it's a 15-minute mini course, so it's wonderful. I'm sure you're going to have the link in the show notes for them to download. So it's very simple. You can play it. I tell people play it on repeat because when you listen to the messages and you recognize how easy it is to bring wealth into your life and to align with the frequency of wealth, you'll wonder why you didn't know all about this a long time ago. So please go ahead and download that. The best way to connect with me is you have two different options. One, I'm very active on Instagram, so you can find me at Michelle Rios Official. I'm always active on there on a daily basis, or you can visit my website, which is michellerioofficial.com.
Perfect. One last question for you before we wrap up. What is a takeaway or memorable note you'd like to leave our audience with today?
I think, one of the most important things that people don't take into consideration when they're living their lives, you get to a certain age, and I always say midlife is usually the prompter of a lot of this, is everyone is here for a reason. And if you aren't living in alignment and on purpose, you're missing the objective of why you came here. So listen to those whispers of the soul. They are really leading you toward what you're supposed to be here, what you're here to do. And we all need whatever that is. So get to it.
Absolutely. So, Michelle, thank you so much for bringing your truth and your wisdom to this conversation today. You are such a powerful example of what happens when we align, trust, and lead with soul. So, make sure that you definitely download her free gift, The Energetic Blueprint. You can get that link in the show notes. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share Creating Powerful Impact. Until next time, have an outstanding rest of your day. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to the Creating Powerful Impact podcast. If you are a successful coach, speaker, author, or thought leader who would like to be on this program, simply visit creatingpowerfulimpact.com/guest. If you are someone who got something out of this interview, would you please do me a favor and share this episode on social media? Just do a quick screenshot with your phone and text it to a friend or post it on your socials. Also, if you know somebody that would be a great guest, tag them on social media to let them know about the show and include the hashtag Creating Powerful Impact. I love seeing all of your posts and great guest selections. We are regularly putting out new episodes and content. To make sure you don't miss any episodes, go ahead and subscribe. Your thumbs up, ratings, and reviews go a long way to help promote the show, and they really mean a lot to me and my team. Want to know more about us? Head on over to our website, graceandeaseproductions.com, or follow me on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Just look for Grace and Ease Productions on your favorite platform. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.